John Llewellyn. So, you know, this guy was pretty good at establishing a business, and he was pretty good at making money. In fact, he lived in, you know, deep parts of southwest Portland, where you usually gotta have a lot of money. So this guy was a regular old Portland success story. He was also a murderer. That story next on a new episode of Historic Murders of Portland. So John Llewellyn was 58 years old in 1930. Had a family, had a wife, had 3 children. I don't know how childish they were, considering this guy was almost 60, but this guy had a family. And his bolt manufacturing company was located here. This is Northwest 14th and Lovejoy. And it looks a lot different than it did back then. I'm not sure what corner of this intersection he worked at. But either way, his business was located some corner at this intersection. So John Llewellyn was a success story. He was also kind of a fiend. In fact, I think that's a nice way to describe him. And despite being 58 years of age, he began cultivating, I'm not really certain if they actually had an affair going on or if he just became obsessed with a particular woman, but 58-year-old Llewellyn became overly enamored of a 26-year-old woman named Mildred Hume, who lived in the city. And I'm not sure, I never found in any information I found on this situation, I never found out exactly where Mildred Hume lived, except that she lived in an apartment, and that would have been in this area. Sorry about the idiots blaring their music and driving like a moron. Jeez. Anyway, back to my story. So, whatever the circumstances are, they linger in mystery, but John Llewellyn, who again, his company was here at Northwest 14th and Lovejoy, which is, you know, it's the Pearl today, so it's practically nothing looks the same, other than, you know, you go a little ways this way, there's a lot of older warehouses, but so much has changed the further north you go. So, like a lot of mashers, I guess you could say, it seems Mildred, I don't know, maybe Mildred was seeing him, maybe she liked the attention, maybe there was no description that she was actually in a relationship or married anything like that, unlike John Llewellyn, who had a family. Llewellyn, not Llewelling. So I don't know if she was, you know, had anybody to cheat on. So, you know, I wonder, you know, maybe Llewellyn approached her. He's potentially a suave older man. He's got his own business. He's got money. And, you know, maybe she liked that. Maybe, you know, I don't know. I could see him approaching her and maybe she feels charmed by the whole thing. You know, he's 32 years. Granted, relationships with larger age gaps, depending on who you were a little bit more common. And it seems like in a lot of circumstances, not quite as frowned upon as they are today. But whatever the circumstances, Llewellyn begins to just shower Hume with attention, and he has the money to do so. So he's sending her letters and flowers and every old, you know, trick in the book to try to get her affection and attention. He's probably not, you know, doing what you should be doing, which is showing how much you care about someone. I don't know how she felt or if she even knew that he was married. Don't know. Probably did. But whatever the circumstances are, we start getting to the latter part of December. Christmas season. It's December 2nd, 1930. And it seems like John Llewellyn's efforts are running a little bit dry. He's not having a lot of success. And so Mildred is home at her apartment, which again, I don't know where that would have been located exactly. And she has a friend named John Lovett. Not John Lovitz, but just John Lovett. Yeah, let's make sure it wasn't Lovelet. So he's from Seattle and he's in town and he's visiting her. Strictly platonic, he's just a friend. So John's a very jealous type. He saw her walking around with another guy once, not even knowing the context, and he just snapped. And a few days before December 2nd, he actually physically attacked her. He grabbed her, started choking her, probably could have killed her. And it was all because she saw her walking around with another man. And as usual, he didn't take the time to maybe try to understand. He was just a man who was clearly overwhelmed with jealousy in all of its facets. So he saw her with another man, and immediately it's like, oh, she's throwing me over for someone else. Who are you sleeping with, you whore? You know, that kind of attitude. So he didn't even take the time to figure out who exactly she was with. It was probably just a friend or a coworker or maybe someone she knew from school or whatever. And he actually attacked and assaulted her. And her friends were very concerned for her. Her friends told her to get police protection, to file something against this guy. They were afraid that this guy was going to come back and, you know, attack her again. But she kind of brushed it off, you know, said, I got this, it's fine. And that brings us to December 2nd, 1930. John Lovett is up there in her apartment. John Llewellyn calls her up while she's there. She answers the phone. According to Lovett, she answers the phone and all he hears her say is like, I can't talk to you right now, I have company. Hangs up. So it's clearly John Llewellyn on the other side of the phone who sees John Lovett enter Hume's apartment. So of course this guy doesn't take the time to understand the circumstances of a situation, so he probably assumes, oh, here's another guy that she's seeing behind my back, even though again I'm not exactly certain how serious their whole dynamic actually was. Now, another reason Lovett would have had reason to think this was Llewellyn that made this call was he was, while he was in town, he was staying at the Heathman Hotel, a place that's notoriously considered haunted in this city. And I know I did a video about another woman who was shot in a hotel room there, and it's still to this day, nobody really knows for certain whether she was murdered or whether it was an accident. The whole explanation seems kind of ridiculous, but the guy that shot her got off because he claimed it was an accident and they couldn't disprove that. That happened in the Heathman Hotel. So Lovett was staying there and Hume would visit him, and Lovett said he saw Llewellyn come to the, you know, it was surprising how many times he saw Llewellyn come to the Heathman during that time. It was such a short period, but he came there a whole bunch of times, and it was because, you know, probably because Mildred was there and she saw her seeing Lovett, or he saw her seeing Lovett, and probably figured there's something going on here and I need to get to the bottom of this. He obviously didn't, because he still didn't figure out that they were just friends. And, you know, in addition to that, you know, other people that lived in the apartment where Mildred Hume lived said that Llewellyn would show up a lot of times randomly. A lot of times she didn't want him there. She tried to run him off. Mildred Hume's roommate, who fortunately wasn't there on the night of December 22nd, said that he would show up a lot, and, you know, she feared for Mildred's life because of how possessive this guy was, and being this rich, successful businessman, John Llewellyn probably felt he was kind of entitled to whatever he wanted. And so he makes this call, and Mildred Hume blows him off again. I can't talk to you now, I have company, hangs up. And that's the last straw for old John Llewellyn. A minute or so later, there's the sound of crackling glass. John Llewellyn punches out a glass frame that was in the door to Mildred's apartment. Punches the glass out, gets his hand in, unlocks the door and opens it. He busts on in on them and they're just sitting there, you know, hanging out. Nothing nefarious is going on. Not that it's John Llewellyn's business either way. And he begins to just scream and shout and generally lose his mind and just start screaming incoherently at Mildred, probably calling her a harlot, a whore, a Jezebel, any synonyms he can pull out of the old bag while he's just raging madly. And then after he's done having his say, again, not taking a moment to really understand what's happening, he pulls a gun and he makes a point to shoot Lovett first, because he's the other man in this dynamic. So he shoots Lovett and then he turns the gun on Mildred and guns her down. She's shot, she falls to the ground, and she dies almost instantly. Lovett, despite being the first, you know, person shot and probably the focus of at least some of Llewellyn's rage, he managed to survive the shooting and escaped with injuries. But Mildred Hume didn't have a chance. So she died almost immediately right there in her apartment. After doing what he did, Llewellyn then fled her apartment and fled to southwest Portland to his home in the Metzger area, kind of heading towards where Portland and Beaverton meet. And once he gets home, either despondent over what he did, Mildred, the love of his life or whatever, is gone. He's also a murderer. He's getting older. If he gets busted, he's going to prison for life, and that's only if he doesn't get executed. So he goes home, pulls out a shotgun, and shoots himself dead in his house. So in the aftermath of the shooting of Mildred Hume, obviously gunshots are heard, police report to the location where it's happened, and Lovett survives. People probably see Llewellyn fleeing from the area, and so authorities are searching for him. So of course, logistically, one of the first spots you'd go to is where somebody lives. So they went to his house and discovered him dead in his home. He took the coward's way out. So it's just nasty. You know, here's a guy that found success in business. He's probably well respected up to this point, and he just screwed it all away. And I hope in the aftermath of all of that, he was not well remembered, despite being a successful businessman. He murdered an innocent woman and then, you know, committed suicide. He was cheating, essentially, on his wife and family. So, guy didn't really deserve to be remembered, at least in a positive light. So yeah, this one got to me. And you know, again, you know, it's most of the time when I'm telling these stories, it's, you know, it's just random people about town. There's not really a whole lot of murder cases where somebody that actually, like, founded his own business and was a person of prominence went off and killed somebody, especially in such a half-cocked, you know, out of their mind, jealous, rage-filled manner. He just came busting in, and, you know, here's this woman that he supposedly loves so much that he'd kill for her, and he comes busting in, screaming at her, insulting her. He attacks her physically, you know, a little over a week earlier. This guy didn't love her. She was a young thing to him, a man who was getting older and knew he had money and influence and knew that he could, at least in his own mind, score a younger chick. And when she started resisting his advancements, he couldn't handle that. And so he decided the best antidote to his problems, because he probably had a lot of them, was a case of murder. Not the best idea. So that's the story, the 1930 murder of a young woman. She was only 26, named Mildred Hume, killed because a crazed, rich business founder was a little out of his mind. So, thank you guys so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Now that I'm taking off on another season of Historic Murders of Portland. Before I go, remember as always to like, share, subscribe. Hit up my Patreon if you want to help me out there. I'm always posting new stuff there. Various forms of different content you can only see if you become a Patreon supporter today. All these little ways you can help my channel grow a little bit more. The link to my Patreon is in the description with this video, as well as the links to my Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Reddit subreddit pages. And all that said, from Northwest Portland, more specifically the Pearl, this has been Steve the Amateur Historian with another episode of Historic Murders of Portland.